Ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of the burqa, of the hijab, is showing that the woman is the property of the man. Is that showing that the man is the only one who can see her face, who can actually see how she looks like, and we think that it's absolutely absurd having this as a value and having this in a Western liberal democracy, because it's basically the place where we want to set this debate exactly in Western liberal democracies. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about today is, first of all, about how these women have absolutely no free will at all, and they're actually confined by the majority. We have a tyranny of the society over these women to wear this hijab. Second of all, we have the problem of discrimination about on the whole Muslim society from the Western liberal democracies. And third of all, about the clash between the Muslim and the Western society. My second speaker will bring you the fourth argument about how the issues of security are resolved through this method. First of all, talking about free will. Now, we say that first of all, you don't choose your religion. This is never your choice. You are taught religion, you are taught values, you are taught, depending on which country you are born, you are taught a different set of religions. Now, we say that women, in Muslim countries, we have this tyranny of the majority for women are born in a status quo that they don't want to change and they cannot change. And why is that, ladies and gentlemen? Now, first of all, if they indeed want to wear the hijab in public places. Now, we see that this was not the effect of a rational decision. No one asked them, hey, do you want to wear this in a public place? They were taught this. They were indoctrinated in the past by the Muslim societies because they were taught exactly that this is the right thing to do, this is the thing that you must be done, or else you will burn in hell and you will torture for 30 years after die, and so on and so forth. So we see that there is actually no free will at this point, and they were previously indoctrinated with this value. And second of all, we see that if they don't want to wear the hijab in public places, they will most probably end up doing so exactly due to the fact that the whole society puts pressure on them, would say that, hey, you are a whore. If you don't wear one, you will actually you disgrace yourself, the whole Muslim society, and the end result is that they will be confined to where they will have no will, exactly due to the fact that the repercussion will be so bad. Exactly, yes.
So if you're opposed indoctrination of religion, do you guys also oppose church?
No, we don't oppose church. We are just saying the fact that this value of the hijab and these traditions has more negative effects on the Muslim society than it has positive ones all by itself, because this particular matter affects them in the most. Now, moving over to my second argument about the whole discrimination issue. Now, what we first say on this point of analysis is that we have an egalitarian movement in Western liberal democracies. We have a set of values that are inherently accepted and mandatory. Now, we can say that for hundreds of years, women have been seen as equals, and we have fought for egalitarian movements throughout the centuries. And over the years, we have set a dress code for our female companions. They are seen as wearing t-shirts, pants, skirts, and so on and so forth. And we have perceived that particular dressing as being the normal one, as being inherently good, and as being absolutely good on a day-to-day basis. Second of all, Second of all, you see that the burqa is seen by the people of Western liberal democracy as being an oppressor of women. We say that the society and the people of society cannot understand the reasons for doing that, and even if you did understand somehow the tradition-related part of the burqa, they cannot actually, they still see that for pressure. They still cannot perceive how women can wear that burqa every day, every single day, covering her whole face, her whole body, when in fact their values, which are built over thousands, over hundreds of years, tell them otherwise. Say that they cannot relate to them, they cannot understand them, they see them as coming from a whole different world with having exactly nothing in common, because this burqa is perceived as being extremely outrageous due to the fact that we have never had such a value in our society. Now, moving on to the third point of analysis about the effects of this misunderstanding. See that behind the burqa, people from the Western world see actually a husband which is oppressing the women to wear that.
Okay,
Because
point of information.
Okay, no. What we are saying is that they cannot understand why anyone wants to wear that. They see it as being an oppression. And we have three effects on this point. First of all, we have a general hatred towards Muslim nations because they are seen as being oppressive. They're forcing women to do something against their will, and we have a general hatred towards all the Muslim people in Western liberal democracies. They perceive them as objectifying women. They perceive them as forcing them to do whatever they want and not caring about their will. And due to the fact that we have fought hundreds of years for the egalitarian movement between them, we see that as having extreme bad effects. Now, moving over to the discriminations toward women on this point, because they are perceived as being inherently different from every single part of the Western society. Now, when we see that communication and friendship and so on is based on finding common values, common things we can discuss about, Muslim people, especially Muslim women wearing the burqa, are perceived as coming from a whole different world. Therefore, they are somehow isolated within their own communities. They will have little, if any, outside world contact. So therefore, they are confined to stay in those societies that oppress them. Yes.
If I'm a 20-year-old single woman who decides I want to convert to Muslim because I like the value of modesty, why shouldn't I be allowed to wear a headscarf?
Because what am I saying to this, that if you do this, you have more disadvantages and drawbacks, as the effects on your decision will affect millions of people throughout the entire world. Now, moving over to my third argument about the clash between the societies. And what we are saying to this point is that when you have two societies which are trying to integrate one in another, aka the Muslim society into the Western liberal society, we must have mutual effort to do so. Because until now, we have tried to give them rights. We have only tried to make the Western population accept the Muslim population by actually permitting them to do whatever they wanted, by giving them the right to build minarets, give them the right to wear burqa and so on. And we didn't give them any responsibility, and they didn't have to give up anything to come so they can give something from themselves and integrate into our world. Now this has inherently failed and failed and failed over and over again due to the fact that we have small Muslim communities spread throughout the Western liberal democracy. Now this requires a change, ladies and gentlemen. We must give them responsibilities and make them try to integrate more into our world, so we have mutual benefit from both fashions. Now we must try to give them responsibility. We must try to reduce the striking differences within society from both sides, not just from the Western point of view. So ladies and gentlemen, for all of these reasons and many, many more, we are proud to be on the proposition side of the house.
It's unfortunate the side proposition has come up here today and tried to tell us about things like discrimination, like hatred, like tyranny over individuals in society, while spewing blatantly xenophobic rhetoric about how we should never ever justify any beliefs that aren't those of Western democracies, that an individual can never make the choice to be modest and take on a religion, that any sort of indoctrination is a problem, even though they still support any other religion in society and the Western liberal democratic principles that were indoctrinated with at birth. We think that this is a problem on their side of the house today. In terms of the basic stance we've taken, we have a few problems. So we talk about how we need to empower women to make some sort of choice. We would say that modesty too is a choice, and a lot of women actually make the choice to wear burqa because it makes them happier, because it allows them to fulfill the self-actualization of their religion, and ultimately because it actually improves their quality of life. Second of all, we reject this assumption that their side of the house actually makes anyone more liberal, or actually forces anyone to actually accept Western democratic ideals. We don't think that taking away the tool that people use to celebrate religion takes away the religion. That was an assumption on their side of the house today. Finally, we wonder if they're against simply Muslim religions or all kinds of religions in general. because they talk about things like being indoctrinated at birth, like people being forced to wear modest clothing. We think those sort of effects happen in religions like Christianity and Judaism as well. When women are expected to wear full-length skirts in certain Christian communities, when men are expected to wear a kippah, we didn't see anything on their side of the house differentiating why we're talking about a burqa. So very quickly, let's look at what they told you today. In terms of their model, first of all, we asked why you are banning other religious symbols or other religions. That was like inherent in the case. Second of all, we asked about the different kinds of like head scarves that they're talking about, because some of them aren't as aggressive as others, some of them don't cover as much as others. We want sort of differentiation. In terms of their first point about the tyranny of women, we have a number of responses. First of all, we think that women absolutely can make the choice to wear a headscarf and hijab, the niqab, and that right should be respected. Second of all, we also think that like even if they're not making that choice, I'm going to show you in my point why their model actually impresses women further. Third of all, we'd say that like indoctrination is just the nature of religion or any principles in our society. It's how some proposition is being indoctrinated by their like Western principles today. It's how anyone learns morality. We don't think there's anything wrong with religion in general, and I'm going to talk about that in my point. Second of all, they talk about discrimination, we need to make women equal. We again would say that we think that in order to make women equal, you should respect their right to be modest and proud, to wear whatever garb makes them most comfortable. That was harmful in their side of the house today. They also told you that like no one would ever want to wear a burqa, and we assume that like no one should in Western liberal democracies. We think that same sort of like indoctrination that you should wear one type of clothing exists in Western liberal democracies as well. This assumption that like maybe women should wear makeup. We didn't see any differentiation on their side of the house either. Finally, they talked about how like the West hates Muslims and therefore they should conform to Western ideals in order to fit in. We think there must be a reciprocal relationship. Because when you tell people that they can't respect their own views, they cannot participate in the relationship, it only, I'll take you in a moment, alienates them further. We don't see how on their side of the house today they actually create a relationship that benefits both parties or increases the hatred. Sure.
This is exactly where hatred exists in Western liberal democracies, in which you force the native population just to respect everything that the Muslims do, and the Muslims do not have a respect.
Okay, so what they're advocating today is that we discriminate against individuals who are not the same as everyone else in society. That we persecute a certain group because they don't fit the norm, and therefore that creates tension. We actually think, first of all, that that creates more tension, and second of all, that that's morally important, and I'll get into that in my book today. So first, I'm going to talk about the choice and religious freedoms. Secondly, I'm going to talk to you about alienation, and then my partner is going to talk to you about the political aspects of this case. Let's look at choice and religious freedom. First of all, we ask you who chooses to wear the burqa. So we look at women who actually, like we think a lot of women actually have that opportunity to choose whether or not they're going to wear it. They're like father figure or individuals into the society ask them, and they make that active choice, or like expectation for them, but they actually choose to accept it. Why is this? Well, we see generally like women in Muslim communities buy into this nature of like wanting to be modest, wanting to feel comfortable in their society. And we also think that like a religion like Islam occupies all aspects of your life. So if you want to be pious and remain like part of your religion, respect your own gods, it's like a belief that you follow out of respect for your own actual self-actualization, out of your own principles. We also think that modesty does things, like it makes women more comfortable in public and it makes them feel like a general sense of pleasure. Not every individual wants to like have their cleavage hanging out all the time. We respect that. We don't think that, you know, you should be forced to like wear things that are sexually provocative. And we actually think that the burqa acts as the ultimate form of like participating in modesty. So that's fairly reasonable. Okay, so we also think that one of the harms under their model today is that like a woman who doesn't feel comfortable going out wearing provocative clothing isn't necessarily going to go out at all. And we think that that actually further than restricting your freedom of choice, restricts your freedom of movement as well. That's harmful. Second, let's look at individuals who, as they would say today, don't actually choose to wear the burqa. We think that this is like a rare circumstance, but it certainly does happen. So when like husbands, when religious leaders expect you to wear the burqa. The problem with their model is just because we're removing the tool to enforce modesty doesn't mean we're removing the belief itself. We actually think if you look at places like France where they have banned things like the burqa and the hijab, you have people, rather than like allowing a female to go out of the house wearing like the regular Western clothing that they support, the husband keeps the woman in the home anyway. He doesn't want to like see her acting modestly in society. We actually think that that's far more harmful because the burqa does, in a sense, empower women. Women who choose to wear the burqa like the feeling that they're being viewed as more than an object, and women who don't necessarily choose to wear the burqa, it allows them a lot more freedom of movement and freedom to like do things that they want in society rather than being restricted to the home. We say that's a benefit. Okay, In terms of freedom of expression, we generally think that societies respect freedom of beliefs in any way you want as long as it doesn't harm others. Their side of the house today never showed you any tangible harm to other people in society when the burqa is worn and when you made that choice. We didn't see any analysis there. In terms of freedom of religion, I tell you that freedom of religion is a form of self-actualization that affects your principles and affects who you are. You get a lot of pleasure out of following your religion, out of following the principles that were set for you, your own sort of personal constitution. We actually think that individuals who are forced to not actually to betray their gods, to betray who they are on the basis of their beliefs and the things that they've been taught since they were a child, it causes a lot of personal crisis. We think that they've actually denied the harms that have come across when an individual cannot respect the very principles they've been indoctrinated with or have believed since they were a child. We actually think that that's harmful. It actually decreases your quality of life. We think that's ignored. So very quickly, let's look at alienation. First of all, we say that just when you remove something like the burqa, it doesn't mean people lose their beliefs. And we actually think when you persecute their beliefs in this way, it only serves to make them want to defend them further. So we think that suppression breeds things like, irrational, lashing out against the government who is persecuting you. It breeds things like violent and harmful responses. If you look at what happened in the USA when Terry Jones burned Korans and actually disrespected the beliefs of Muslims, it caused Muslim populations in Afghanistan to overrun a US military facility. That's the sort of harmful things that occur when you alienate individuals. We also think that it does things like decreases social contact when you're telling people they shouldn't participate in your society and they should just go into social enclaves. It actually increases the understanding between cultures that they have. When you don't actually interact with people of another belief, it increases things like hatred because you don't understand that they're actually people, the very things they talked about in their first point today. Finally, we'd say it justifies the actions of groups that are opposed to religious individuals and take violent action against them, like the BNP Party in the UK and all of these harmful groups. And it's because we think their model solves nothing, their model actually creates more harm and disrespects individuals, that we beg to oppose today. Thank you very much.
think that this is right. And if you disrespect this, we have this special place full of fire and brimstone and devils, and which you're gonna burn and be tortured forever and ever and ever until the end of time. Now, exercise free will. This is what side opposition tells us today. Side opposition tells us just through mere rhetoric that, just having a bit of modesty is not necessarily something bad. Not being provocative is not necessarily something bad. Without really analyzing what this tradition is, what this tradition means, how it comes to be, and really what we're talking about today. So first of all, just to clarify the definitions and the motion, this motion talks about full burqa, about the full hijab. It doesn't talk about, just some hair tie or just not being out there in a bikini, okay? It's just by their analysis, by not wearing full burqa, they would have their cleavage standing out. They would be very provocative, just as Team Canada is dressed right now. And we don't consider it to be necessarily true that you need to cover your nose, your face, and your hands to be a decent person. So we're not going to accept that misportrayal of modesty. Now, this debate is about forcing the discrimination of women. So I'm going to have three major constructive points in this debate. First of all, about how women are discriminated by the status quo. Second of all, how this impacts the Western liberal democracies and their societies and creates interracial hatred. And third of all, about how we have to identify people in democracies, and this is why we can force the burqa to be outlawed. But first of all, a little bit of a rebuttal. Now, their whole constructive point was based upon the short-term backlash. They told us, women are going to feel bad, some husbands are going to feel aggressive, and so on and so forth. The real point why this is completely irrelevant is because it ignores the long term. You see, if you're always afraid of a short-term backlash, you're never ever gonna progress. You're just say, oh, I don't want to feel bad, so I'm gonna remain in the present. And here we have the example of Turkey. Now, when Turkey became Turkey and disbanded the Ottoman Empire, the then ruler, Mustafa Kemal, or commonly known as Atatürk, actually outlawed the burqa, hijab, and any kind of complete Muslim covering. Just because he believed in the same values in which we believe, the value of rationality. And even if he had some sense of, short-term backlash, in the long term, law becomes tradition. In the long term, people get used to the facts. And in the long term, even if there is some sort of present backlash and hatred, it's declining. So it's a problem that solves itself. So it's not really relevant. Because we have problems that accentuate and still remain. And this is how I'm going on to further my own case. Now let's talk about my first argument about female discrimination. But before that, yeah.
Okay, can you tell us why religions are illegitimate simply because they instill beliefs in youth?
Oh, they're not all of them are illegitimate, because some instill good beliefs, okay? We're the prophets of rationality, right? It's not necessarily inoculation, it's the inoculation of disease beliefs. It's the inoculation of beliefs that have clear disadvantages. That's what we're up against today, right? So first of all, this was actually the first point for which they attacked our first argument about female discrimination. And we're talking about what is special, what we're talking about that's so special. Now we've told you that they're inoculated with these beliefs, and they completely agree with this. Second of all, we've told you that these beliefs are not beneficial. They're not modesty, okay? They're just fully covering. The reason for which the burqa exists is not modesty, it's about keeping the souls to their husband. It's about this idea that all the female beauty should be solely witnessed by his husband. It's about this idea that the woman exists to be beautiful just for the husband. That's why you cover each and every visible part of your body. It's not this kind of misportrayal of modesty that they kind of try to put on us. And we really think that they have to respond to this. Second of all, what's really, really, really pernicious and evil about this belief is the chances of exit. Because we believe that when your parents will not talk to you, when your parents are going to tell you, you're a sinner, you're going to burn in hell if you do this, the chances of exit are zero. Like if you're a Christian, if you want to be, I don't know, out there and wear a bikini, you can. If you're a woman who wears full burqa, you can't take off your mask, you can't show your face because you're going to be socially excluded. So therefore, this is why it's pernicious. Now, second of all, on this idea of Western discrimination, I say that they had never ever responded on or mentioned this idea of Western discrimination, because Western populations, like Germans in Germany, French people in France, they see this and they don't like this, and this undermines this idea. I think in a second, this undermines this idea that Muslims are bad, they're wrong, they have wrong values, and it's okay for me to discriminate against them. And this accentuates this discrimination. This accentuates this animation in time. Since 2000, from the beginning of the 1990s, in which immigration from the Muslim countries has started to be a problem, this hatred has been accentuated because they're always reminded. So even if side opposition points out a hatred from backlash, that's a diminishing. This is getting bigger and bigger by each day that passes. So that's why we care about it. Yes?
How can it be true that if Western countries like France and Germany hate Islam so much that they're putting in this resolution specifically for the benefit of half the Muslim population?
I don't see why that's relevant. Okay, if this measure happens to solve both hatred and female discrimination, that might be a coincidence. We're very happy to solve two problems at the same time. Now, okay, so now that I've analyzed this idea of why this hatred is very important, because it always increases, going on to my own argument. This is an argument about identifying responsibility. I always say that in countries such as Germany, if you're protesters, police have a duty to protect you. But once you put on a headscarf and you mask your own face, police can beat you up and do not have any responsibility to protect you anymore. And this is because identifying a person means identifying his actions with his identity, right? So what this actually means is that when you can identify yourself in a public place, when you can be filmed by a camera in a store and people can say, oh, this is that person with that ID, you are responsible. Your actions are tied to your person and you have obligations. When you do not have this, you are not responsible because your actions are not tied to your person, you are not tied to your obligations. I say that the state has inherent duty to force people to respect the law and to force people's obligations upon themselves. So therefore, the state has this duty to force anyone who would rather be anonymous to come out, to identify himself, and to be responsible for his own actions, right? And this is why you have the power to actually ban anonymity in any form or way. So talking about discrimination and talking about anonymity and hatred, these are the three main points which weigh for side government today. Thank you.
Now, speak up.
It's unfortunate today that side proposition has tried to mischaracterize the debate today to give themselves the advantage in that they think they're doing this for a benefit. They think they're going to improve the lives of women, and in some strange way, they think they're going to improve the relationships between Western countries and Middle Eastern countries. The debate today, ladies and gentlemen, is not about whether the niqab is like above female oppression. It's actually about the oppression of Western liberal democracies who tell a religion that they are no longer allowed to practice it in public. They are no longer allowed to manifest symbols of their religion, symbols of their belief in public over other ones. And we haven't seen a justification today on side proposition as to why this is exclusive to Islam, and the reason is because it's not. The reason is because Western countries are doing this as an excuse to speak out against Islam, to speak out in a tangible symbol, in a tangible way for them to get back at those countries that they don't like. It's on this basis that I'm going to run through, first of all, an extensive refutation of what we've heard in constructive and clash today from their first two speakers. And then I'm going to get into our third and final point about the political stage. So first of all, let's talk about this whole idea about that women are the property of a man and the idea of modesty. Let's clear this up. So first of all, we ask them in a POI, what if I am a single woman? Or what if I am a young child who is in no way tied to a man? Why can't I choose that for myself? And they didn't have an adequate response to that. They just said well, society would force you to do it. We have a number of responses to this. First of all, we think that there are specific women who don't want to exit the religion or who choose to wear the burqa themselves because, as we told you, they respect modesty and they think that's an excellent pillar of their beliefs. Second of all, when they told us that there's no chance of exit in this religion and it's completely forced, we think if somebody who was born into an Islamic country and for some fundamental reason really is in opposition to their beliefs, there are chances for them to emigrate, right? There are chances that I could move from Tunisia to France and not follow those restrictions anymore, right? This isn't an exclusive religion. Finally, so then they talked about free will and how you don't choose your own religion. But again, we ask them why this is only exclusive to Islam, right? There are a lot of other religions that start from birth and indoctrinate and maybe have bad values. But that was their difference and their answer to the POI is that, this religion instills bad beliefs and we don't we can't allow that. Numerous responses. First of all, we think the main pillars of Islam are actually quite positive. Things like giving charity to poor, things like making pilgrimage, not drinking alcohol, modesty. We think our world could maybe do a little bit better off with a little bit more charity and a little bit less drinking and a little bit less provocative clothing, right? We reject the fact that all religions are based off of negative principles. And even if that was true, a lot of people have done terrible things in the name of Christianity or in the name of other religions. So we need to see the exclusivity today on their side of the house they won't quit. Finally, they told us that in terms of discrimination, this egalitarian movement. So we asked them, why is this inherently different if I choose to dress modestly as a secular individual in the United States? If I choose that I want to wear long skirts? And we'd like to see a response to that. Finally, they told us, like, in their final point that, like, friendship is based off of looking the same. So if I wear the burqa, I won't have any social contact with other people. 2 responses. First of all, we think that's not necessarily true. Like, I can decide to wear more provocative clothing and still be friends with somebody who wears long skirts. Like, we think we've come to the point in our egalitarian society where I can look past someone's experience and their appearance towards their personality. But second of all, even if that wasn't true and I decided as a Muslim woman I didn't want contact with anybody else, that was fine because I was putting my religion, my own personal constitution, as you would put it, over things like social contact. We think that's a choice that people can make. Finally, they told us, like, in this weird final case came out about profiling and security, we have several responses to the idea of anonymity. First of all, there are ways to mitigate, right? Like, if I'm wearing a full hijab and going through an airport, I can have a female TSA officer ask me to lift my veil to identify who I am in a private way that but doesn't, like, affect my modesty. Like, we think there are ways to mitigate that. Second of all, we don't think that there are no restrictions to wearing covering Western dress. Like, why can't I walk into a corner store dressed in a full-length trench coat, a large ski cap, and sunglasses? Like, that will technically cover me the same way. So why is it exclusive under their law? No thank you. So now let's talk about and go into our final point about the political state. Now that we've given you some class, hopefully raise some of the questionable doubts today that are inherent in the case. So we have a couple things, a couple subpoints under this idea of the political state. The first off being the precedent against other problems. So we think it's necessary for the government to justify why they can do this in Islam and not in other religions. So if it's for the idea of security, why aren't we banning things like the symbolic Sikh knife that often Sikhs wear as a symbol of protection, as a symbol of defense? If it's about things like modesty, why aren't we banning like Mennonites and those Christians who force women to wear long skirts and cover their shoulders and ankles, right? But they told us that because it's more oppressive, we obviously love that. So secondly, like we think this would actually set a precedent for banning other religious symbols. Like if the government says, well, we can do this to Islam because we think it's bad, what stops them from picking a different religion down the road and saying, well, we think there are harms to this too, so let's just ban it. We think there needs to be a better justification today on their side. Yes?
Okay, we ban burqas and not long skirts because burqas are inherently different and promote inherently different values than long skirts.
I don't think so, right? Like I might be a secular person who just happens to have a very domineering husband who might not be religious but just doesn't want other men to see me as a sexual object. They haven't actually identified why this is exclusive to religion and why it's exclusive to Islam. Until they do that, they won't be able to prove their burden of proof. Finally, we'd say it's actually based by the state off of prejudice, right? So they told us that it's for the women. That simply isn't true, right? Like states like the United States aren't going to implement this resolution because they are so concerned about Muslim women. They do it because there are age-long conflicts between Arab states and between Western states that have happened through hundreds of years of conflict and are evident right now because of geopolitical tensions that are fueled between things like political tensions, fueled between oil crises, fueled between protests and wars in these nations. These countries, and I'm very adamant about this, are not doing it for the benefit of these women. They're doing it to send a message to Muslim countries that they are the ones who are in control and they can choose to alter their religion, alter their state in the way that they best see fit. This is a method about control, it is not a method of free choice. Secondly, we'd say it actually justifies actions by anti-Muslim groups, right? So it justifies actions by groups like the BNP or Baptist groups in the South who choose to desecrate mosques and who choose to slander and have hate speech. And it shows them that like that's legitimate and that Islam is a bad religion and we should be going against it. And we don't think we can justify the actions of those states. Furthermore, in terms of amalgamation into society, we would say that the best way to increase a cohesive society is to actually accept the religion itself and not try to amalgamate and change it to a point that we find acceptable, right? Like we think that it can exist in its own inherent way and we can change ourselves to adapt to it rather than the other way around. We think that we have less to lose in that case. We think it is beneficial if people are able to open their mind. Finally, we think they need to address the fact this is probably going to create some more tensions between Arab states and Western nations. We think it could also possibly harm Christians in Islamic countries when those people are seen as targets by Muslim and by their Muslim leaders because their countries have done bad things and inflamed that religion and harmed it. We think that until they can address the fact that Western and Middle Eastern relations will be harmed, the fact that this isn't justified by the state because all of the harms they have identified are not exclusive to Islam, we are proud of this.
Thank you. Now I'm going to ask. Sorry, class speaker.
Well, it's really funny how side opposition today is arguing for empowering women, while they are saying that these women should be oppressed by their husband, by their religion, and should have no right whatsoever to be integrated in the society. And this is exactly through this value I'm going to show you why side proposition has won the debate. Because we do empower women, and because we do grant them the rights they deserve, and because we do solve this problem, at least partially, of discrimination. So I have mainly 4 points. First, I'm going to talk about if there is a free will or not. Secondly, about if discrimination in the status quo relates with the fact that women are wearing burqa and all of these symbols. Thirdly, about the fact that does Western countries have the right to take such a measure? And fourthly, about the backlash. In here, I'm going to see the point of security and the point of the backlash from the other countries. Now on to my first point about the free. And we've basically told you how you don't really choose your religion. We basically told you how you don't feel it rationally. It's just something that is that you are taught to, and you can't really choose it. And what? No, thank you, miss. And what team opposition was trying to protect here? Well, we have these Muslim women who have all the rights in the world, but they are basically choosing to wear burqa, and they have all the rights, and it's something that has to do with modesty and all that. But let's be serious and let's be real. It's not happening. It's simply not happening. We see how in Saudi Arabia, because of the fact, no, thank you, miss, that the woman has dared to go on the street and drive a car, we had basically all the people were outraged. We see how those women don't have the right to choose, and those women from the Islamic religion are oppressed by their husbands, and they are taught that they should only act according to what their husbands want, and so on and so forth. No, thank you. So we see that they don't really have a realistic image of how Muslim woman looks like, and this is the false premise from which they started all the debate. And they basically told us how this symbol is a symbol of celebrating and things like that, and we say that this is completely false. It's not a symbol of celebrating, it's a symbol of property. No, thank you. It's the symbol that the man uses in order to hide the beauty of the woman from all others men. And this is exactly how Muslim religion goes. This is exactly how the reality works. We don't have these women wearing burqa because they want to. We have these women wearing burqa because they are obliged to. No, thank you. Well, we see how. No, thank you. Where we see how this is exactly the problem that we have with Islam, and this is exactly the problem that we will have with any other religion who will have such a negative effect. We have this problem with Islam because it's actually denying the women some rights. And we see how we've actually explained to you, no, thank you, that first of all, we have here an oppressive husband, and we have women who are excluded socially because they don't really know how to interact with other people, because they are not really allowed, I think in the second, to interact with other people. And secondly, we've told you, a point that has never been rebutted, that you can still believe in your religion without actually wearing burqa. It's not how we are banning the religion. It's not something that it's written in the Quran, for instance. It's actually something that is simply something that the Muslim society has adopted. But before I move on.
Okay, if men are so domineering and don't want anybody else to see their wife in any form of skin, why under your resolution would they ever allow them out of the house and ever allow them to integrate into society if they would be seen without their headdress and coverings?
Well, we think that men are not going to make their women stay in the house, and if this is the case, women are simply going to, I don't know, pretend are going to ask them to go out of the house. And we don't think that half of the population of the world will stay in prison in the house, and this is something that is not simply real and not simply feasible. Now, going on to my point, you see how we are not actually banning a religion, we are not actually banning modern women from doing this, we are only eliminating the symbol of oppression. And this is exactly the single thing that we are doing. Now, this brings me to my second point. We had a premise that was never rebutted by the proposition, and how, because of the fact that Western people find it hard to accept this thing, because of the fact that we fought, we fought throughout history against these oppressions, we find it hard to accept such a symbol of oppression. We find it hard to accept women who are not allowed to see their faith. No, thank you. And this is exactly why we discriminate these women, and this is exactly why this brings to a point where we do have an unsustainable society, where we have a lot of tensions between Western people and between Arab people because of the fact that they think that this is wrong, because of the fact that they think that Muslim women are not having their right to respect. And this brings me to the third point. And this point is about the fact that they argued about and how we don't really have the right as Western countries to impose something. And we told you from the beginning that we have. And why is that? Because in the last years, we've tried to integrate Arab people and Muslim people in the society. And it's something that has never been addressed by the opposition. No, thank you. We've tried to take measures in order for them to integrate in the society. And the situation stays the same. Yeah. And why? Because we don't really ask them responsibilities. We don't really ask them to do something as well. We don't really ask them to give up from their part and do something as well. And this is extremely important, ladies and gentlemen. We need mutual cooperation in order to really reach something. And we had this example in Turkey. Turkey, which is an Islamist country, we had this example in Turkey where they let go of burqa. Guess what? They are still Islamist, but they are not going. In the street with burqa. Yes, miss.
Okay, so if a lot of French people like hated African Americans or a certain other group of like races or another group in society, we should accept that sort of racism too, because like the majority of society is not cohesive with those individuals.
Thank you. We are saying that it's not something that we are banning from them. We are saying that this is exactly the point. We are not actually denying them something. We are actually asking them to cooperate with us and actually make a mutual operation, because we are giving from our side too. Now, to my last point, that this is the package. Now, we've brought you the point of the security, and this is something really important, because any kind of person can dress in a burqa and then go there and make a terrorist attack or any kind of thing, because you cannot really see him, right? And this is not something related to women, this is something related to any kind of person. Any kind of person can do this. And we think that security is really important to our society, and we think that this is exactly the point on which we should ban this, because otherwise this will affect all the citizens from our society. Well, they brought us the point of package. And we've already told you how this is something that we can actually accept, because of the fact that every kind of progress comes with a backlash from part of the society. We can't evolve without having also on the short a backlash, but on the long term we will have more benefits. On the long term we will really empower women and we will really have less discrimination in our Western countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ne, promiň. A někdo tě schání. Že dobré akce fotky. Že dobré fotky, kde dobře gestikulujou, by mohly být. Že ve 3. patře, v 16. A ještě tady ve 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, side proposition has come to you today with a case which is quite simply racist. But I think you already knew that, so I'm going to get in and show why this racism is wrong and explain to you why racism is bad, since that seems to be what side proposition wants us to do today. There are really 5 different areas of clash. There's a lot of clash in this debate, and I'm going to go through each of them and really show why this resolution just simply doesn't make sense. And here are the 5 of them. I'm going to tell you them first, and then we'll get into them one at a time. Firstly, choice. Secondly, security. Once we've talked about security, then we're going to look at reconciliation, women's rights, and finally we'll talk about politics. And I'll sum everything up. But let's start off, let's look at choice. So this has been the first thing we heard from side proposition. They tried to tell us that basically indoctrination violates choice. And we think this is simply very wrong for a number of reasons. Firstly, the idea that because there's societal pressure, because other people are telling you something is a good idea, doesn't inherently make you incapable of making choice. You're still a rational actor. And we don't believe that because Western society thinks that women should wear makeup, they're now in some way not choosing to wear makeup. It's still a decision that they're making. when people make decisions with societal pressure, it's still a free decision, and we accept that. Now, there is another set of situations which they talk about, in which they're actually under forcible coercion. And this is a different situation. When a husband is threatening to beat his wife if she goes out not wearing a burqa, then yes, that is actually coercion. However, that's also illegal. It's already something that we don't allow. When the Muslim community is coercing somebody, that is already illegal, and that is already not allowed. So the only case that this is really talking about is where people already have free will. And there are many examples of rational actors who even proposition can't disagree with. And my partner's brought up some. For example, a single young woman makes a decision to wear a burqa. In fact, one of the people on Team Canada wears a headscarf, and she does it because she personally believes in that. And there are lots and lots of people who even proposition couldn't disagree, have a rational and personal decision that they support the values of Islam. And we think that just because something is indoctrinated, just because it's something you've been taught for a long time, doesn't make it untrue. Ladies and gentlemen, what government told you today when we asked, what about church? What about Christian values? What about Jewish values? They told you that, well, those are good values, and these are bad values, and that's the difference. So their assertion on side proposition is that it is not up to a person to decide whether or not a value is good, but up to the government to decide whether or not we can do something. When my religion espouses a value, it's not up to me to decide whether or not that's worthwhile to me or beneficial. It's up to the government. Ladies and gentlemen, this is simply blatantly oppressive and totalitarian of side proposition, and we don't think that this is okay. Now, why isn't this okay? Why isn't this oppression good? Well, really, 3 reasons. Firstly, it's bad because you are your own best judge of what's good for you. Because if you think that you want to be modest, if you want to wear the burqa and you think that that is valuable to your life, who are we to say the government is a better person to decide? If you enjoy it and that makes your life better, that is good. By passing this resolution, we remove people's freedoms, and that is going to decrease their quality of life. And then secondly, the precedent set by this resolution is extremely dangerous. Since when, ladies and gentlemen, is the government allowed to decide what's okay? Let's look to perhaps Amish. Amish also espouse modesty. They support wearing full-length skirts and avoiding electricity. So do we think that not seeing electricity is bad, so we should ban that practice? Should we ban the Amish under side proposition's ideas? Under the precedent they've set, we could even look at it and say, well, the ideas of Western pop culture support drinking, which is a bad idea. And we don't think that the indoctrination of drinking is good, and so the government should decide that for everyone, whether or not they're allowed to drink, instead of letting people decide for themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, taking away free choice is harmful to people because it's bad for them, and it's bad for everyone because of the precedent it sets. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, but when you are told that you're going to go to hell if you don't wear the burqa, you're not a personal judge. You don't judge at all. You just accept as being true.
And yet, people accept all sorts of other principles, like you go to hell if you don't accept Christ. And you don't oppose that. If you oppose all of religion, the idea that you can decide what people believe is simply untrue. I can be told that I'll go to hell if I don't wear a burqa. I wouldn't wear a burqa, but I can be told that I would go to hell for all sorts of reasons, and I don't have to believe that. I'm still a rational person, and we accept that human beings are capable of making decisions. Well, let's get off this, because we have a lot more stuff to talk about. Firstly, next they told us about security. They told us basically that this is a security risk, and this was a small point, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense, because their risks are not things that don't show up in other places. They told us that you can't be ID'd, and we quite simply defanged that point by saying if you need to be ID'd, then you will be taken to a place, and we accept that if you need to be ID'd, you can take off your scarf for a woman, and that doesn't violate your principles, and that's okay. Then their other idea that visibility, having your face hidden is simply morally wrong, doesn't hold up, because they didn't ban hoodies and sunglasses, they didn't ban me wearing a ski mask, they didn't ban any other setups which stop visibility, so clearly that's not what they're talking about. The security point definitely falls. Now, reconciliation. They told us that by oppressing Muslims, we will create a more reconciled society. And this is just wrong, ladies and gentlemen. When you oppress someone, you polarize them. They see the Western government as them, and the Muslims who are trying to follow their rules as us. And you, in fact, you have a problem with society's unfairness. And they see themselves as different, which separates people. And their argument that we need to have reciprocity for reconciliation is invalid. They told us that we respect Muslim principles, but Muslims don't respect Western principles, but that's wrong. Muslims in Western countries don't force other people to wear burqas. They respect Christian values, they allow other people to have their religions. And so we should, in the same way, allow them to have their religion. It is, in fact, reciprocal, just as we said, as opposed to oppressive. which is what side proposition is proposing. Let's quickly take a look at an example that would prove this. If you look at different groups in North America, the natives were being tempted to assimilate them. We pushed them into residential schools, into reserves. We forced a lot of different ideas on them, but they didn't assimilate. Whereas other immigrant groups are much better assimilated, despite no attempts to force them into Western culture. Now, let's look at women's rights. We have to look at the alternative, ladies and gentlemen, and what will happen to people who, for whatever reason, have a strong belief in this when we stop them to be allowed, when we don't allow them to follow this belief. Quite simply, ladies and gentlemen, they go backwards. There are original Muslim sects that don't allow women out of the house, and the burqa is actually a step forwards. By telling them that they can't wear the burqa, they'll just get pushed back into a more restrictive society, so this is worse for women. And then finally, we look at politics, and side proposition hasn't talked about this at all. The dangers are very significant to a country for attacking one segment of the population. Firstly, they lose immigration, and Muslims are a valuable and worthwhile part of society. And if they refuse to come to the West, that is bad for Western countries. And this creates international hatred because, quite simply, we are oppressing Muslims, and Muslim countries are then going to, have to accept the risk that they're going to oppress Western people in their countries. And that's very dangerous for not just Muslims being oppressed, but our own people. And we can finally look at a great example, ladies and gentlemen, that really sums up this debate. In Spain, Muslims and Christians used to get along. And then one day, the Christian government gained control and started enacting oppressive rules. They started setting curfews, restrictive taxes, and quite simply having oppressive rules against Muslims. And when they did this, lots of Muslims left. Lots of Muslims got angry, and this was really the start of Christian-Muslim hatred. And that is what we're seeing here again. Oppression doesn't bring support. Oppression results in degrading people and creating conflict, and we don't support that. Thank you.
Now is the time for the open mic.
Psych-Prop today has asserted a lot of blatantly false assumptions about the Muslim religion. They've told you that they've asserted why women wear burqas. They've asserted that Islam is actually evil. You've heard that on one of the speeches today. They told you that everybody doesn't really want to be Islamic, but they can't leave the religion. We've thoroughly debunked these arguments on our side of the house today. But furthermore, we just say that Psych-Prop doesn't want to be Islamic, and we're okay with that. But we don't think because they don't view Islam as legitimate, because they don't personally support those beliefs, they have a right to force that onto Muslim individuals, and they have a right to actually break through the fabric of society and harm all sorts of social cohesion. We think that they want to put along assumptions today. We don't think that their xenophobic rhetoric was in any way legitimate. So I'm going to look at the debate in two narrative clash. What benefits the actors more, and what is the differentiation between Islam and other religions, and how do we actually liberalize our religion? Okay, so what benefits the actors more? First, we look at women, because this was sort of the main thing that came out of proposition today. We told you on our side of the house today why, in fact, a woman might choose to wear burqa. We told you should do it for religious reasons, because Islam and any other religion, when we think that this is a common thing, actually goes into all parts of your life. Your choice to be modest, your choice to be religious actually causes fulfillment for individuals. And we actually think that taking away your basic principles, the tenets of your self-actualization that come from religion, decreases quality of life. We told you that down the bench on our side of the house today, and they simply asserted that this wasn't true, that no one could possibly want to wear a burqa. Well, I'm sorry, but a lot of people do. A lot of people would like to act in a modest way. We told you that. We told you how women feel empowered, not necessarily just being used as a sexual object. That's something that Muslim women have said as reasons why they continue to wear religious headgear. We also told you that it allows things like freedom of movement. Even for an individual that's forced into wearing a burqa, in order to move freely, we think that they need to have some of the way that their husband will let them out of their house, and they were never adequately able to respond to it on their side of the house today. They told you that women are simply indoctrinated. We think that's the tenet of all religion. They told you that the burqa is for some reason so much more oppressive than wearing a long skirt in a Christian religion, but they were never actually able to differentiate it. We don't think that any of their analysis about the benefits of women stand today, and we ultimately take them on that point. that was like cohesion. What they told you today essentially was that French people hate Muslim individuals. They don't like the fact that women wear the burqa, and therefore we should conform to their sort of hatred and just do whatever they want. We told you on our side of the house today that the relationship needs to be reciprocal. We talked to you in all of these speeches about that. We also said we simply don't buy that you should just conform to the views of like racist or xenophobic individuals. We told you about justifying the views of extremist parties when I first told today. And we also just don't think that's true. It's not like you cannot possibly like someone who's Islamic if you're not Islamic yourself. We told you that that was just an assumption. We had an entire point on cohesion, on the fact that you were disenfranchised Muslims that wasn't really dealt with on their side of the house today. They seem to assume that some would just be okay with the government taking away a religion that was taken up like 30 years of their life. We don't buy that on our side of the house today. And we don't want to conform to religious or to people who are extremely racist or extremely against certain religions. Finally, they talked about security. We think we debunked this fairly legitimately. We talked about alternatives like taking off your headscarf in a private place. We told you it's not exclusive to headscarf, and we also told you that some of the headscarves that they actually are talking about don't cover your face. So let's look at the differentiation they talked about. They told you that specifically Islamic people, that it's somehow so much worse than any other religion, and therefore we should actually ban their stuff and nothing else. Well, first of all, we told you that not the government's role to decide who has the right religion, who has the right principles and beliefs. We told you it isn't a huge difference, and we think that they assert their own values rather than actually dealing with the fact that they're taking away people's religious freedom. They never actually adequately debunked that point. We ultimately think we stand in both the principle and the practical case today. Thank you very much.
Now I'm going to ask Dr. Ryan what's the latest.
Some time ago, a man named Anders Breivik told 70 progressive liberal politicians in Norway. He bombed a politician's camp. And these people weren't even Muslim. They were just advocating religious freedom and tolerance. And we say that we don't agree with what Anders Breivik did. But we say that an unsustainable society that creates the hatred cannot be left to exist any longer. We told you we have a problem. The fact that the status quo creates and amplifies ethnic hatred. And this was really the sensibility was never really responded by side opposition. So first of all, I'm going to talk about free will, and if there is an actual breach of free will. Now we've told you about how people are inoculated into actually wearing the burqa. And they've actually agreed to this. They've told us a lot of things are actually inoculated. Many people are made to believe stuff because it's socially acceptable. Now what we've told you to this is that this means that it's not actually a matter of if you breach free will, if you actually breach the freedom to believe in a certain religion or not. It's how we want to breach free will. Do we want religion or society to breach free will, or the social circle of family of the or do we want the state to enter and do this? Now we believe that the state is a better actor. And we've told you three main reasons for this. First of all, because of this gross misportrayal of the full burqa arraignment by side opposition. They talked about modesty and obscenity and stuff like that, and this is really besides the motion. Okay? Getting real and talking about reality, showing your face is not obscene. It's not about obscenity. It's about oppression. It's about a man wanting to have a woman just for himself. It's about a man wanting nobody else to see him. Second of all, we talked about the chances of exit, which are almost zero because of social pressure. And third of all, we talked about the idea of personal judgment, in which there is no personal judgment, because you just believe it to be true. And they've agreed to this idea. They said, yeah, you do believe a lot of things to be true. So this really invalidates and has undermined the whole idea of religious freedom. Now going on to the social system in Europe. Now we've told you that you have a long-term hatred in society that's created by differences. Now I've told you that inherently when two societies or two type of ethnical people live together, someone has to come halfway. There's no sustainable society in which you can force just one part of the population, namely the Western people, to accept each and every difference and give all the rights to some other people. We've told you that if we need to meet halfway, and that by eliminating one of these differences, namely the burqa, this hatred issue shall be resolved. And this specific idea of long-term amplification of hatred was never actually tackled as our opposition. What they did draw on the third part of my reply was this idea of a short-term backlash. And this has been thoroughly dealt with us. We've told you the example of Turkey. We've told you that even in a Muslim society, this was feasible. We've told you that genuinely, on the long term, their hatred goes down, whereas our hatred goes up. We've told you that their problem solves itself, whereas our problem just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And therefore, our problem needs a solution, not their problem. So therefore, even if they were right on their constructive points, they didn't prove this debate. They didn't tackle the point of social sustainability. And that's why self-government has won.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for an interesting debate. Now please shake your hands and leave us in peace to finish the session. I think it will take like 5 to 10 minutes. Oh, sorry, it's a close round. So we are free to go. Thanks for reminding me. But definitely after the break is announced, do find us for feedback, because especially this debate I think will be very beneficial. It was a good debate, interesting one, I can say it right away. But I think all of us would have liked to more suggestions for Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good.
Oh, those are Alex. No? They're not mine.
Oh,
Out of mine.
oh, sorry.
Now, is this working now? Okay, so we're going to